Oftentimes, when we want to do something in coding, we're going to want to do it more than once. And writing it all out over and over again can become kind of a hassle. We also sometimes want to do something sometimes and want to do something else other times. To manage this, we do something called control flow. Control flow essentially is the method by which we're going to control the flow of our program. Up to now, we've been executing essentially from top to bottom. We don't always want to do everything from top to bottom in exactly that order. So we need things like if statements, and we need things like loops to help us manage when things happen. Let's start off with a simple example of if statements. So let's get a number from our user. Remember, we're going to go ahead and cast it as a number. We're going to prompt our user, and we're going to say, guess a number between 1 and 10. Okay. And then we basically want to see whether or not they guessed the number we want. Now, this isn't going to be a very fun game because we're actually going to predetermine the number. Let's guess number equal 5. Okay. And then we're just going to compare whether or not the user guessed the number that we had entered up there. So we're going to say if user number equal guess number console.log you win. Now let me just quickly talk through a few things that are going on here. So this is not unique to you. You've seen me define a variable and give it a value. This is also not unique. We've prompted the user before and gotten a value from the user before. Not a problem up here. And we've cast it as a number. Now we're going to do if. This is the first start of what we call a conditional, right? If something is true, continue on with this block of code. And then in these parentheses here, we're asking what we want it to be true. In this case, we're saying, is user number, the number the user entered, the same as guess number? Now you'll notice here I didn't do equals, but I did equals equals, because two equals next to each other is a different operator than equals. Single equals is what we call the assignment operator. Essentially, that's how you assign a value to a variable. Double equals is what we call a comparison operator. And that is, it checks to see if the values are equal. So when we're doing comparisons, we want to make sure that we're using that double comparison operator, that double equal sign. Okay, let's save our code. Let's run our code. We're prompted for a number. We're going to enter 4. Nothing happens, and that's correct. 4 is not equal to 5, so this code inside these curly braces never runs. That's what conditionals do for us. Likewise, if I were to enter 5, I would see you win because 5 is equal to 5, and thus the code inside this code block here, these two curly braces, does run. Let's say I want to know if the user gets it wrong, and I need to tell the user something. Well, I can run an else statement and say console.log that is not right. Okay. Save it again, run it again. I enter 4. That is not right. Refresh, run it again, hit 5, and I get you win. So you see, depending on what is entered here, whether it's 5 or not 5, depends on whether if block runs or the else block runs. If the number is 5, this runs. Otherwise, no matter what else it is, this block runs. In fact, it doesn't even have to be a number. Because it is not explicitly 5, it is anything else, including not a number. we simply go to our else statement here, and that runs instead. And this is the basic building block of control flow, this idea of if else. And it revolves around this expression right here, which is evaluating, meaning it's becoming equal to a true or false value. Either it's true, user number and guess number are the same, or it's false, user number and guess number are not the same. But this is not a very fun game. I guess once and I'm either right or not. Typically, with games like this, you want to be able to guess multiple times. To do that, we're going to need a loop. In this case, a while loop makes a lot of sense. Essentially, while user number does not equal guess number, I want to prompt the user to guess again. If the two are equal, we're going to say you win. If the two are not equal, we would say that's not right. But let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and run our code. Guess a number between 1 and 10. I'm going to guess 4. Guess a number between 1 and 10. Well, I'm going to guess 7. Guess a number between 1 and 10. I'm going to guess 5. Huh. I guessed 5, but 5 didn't work. I wonder why 5's not working. If I come over here, one of the things I'm going to notice is that I'm actually redeclaring my variable here with the let word. If I do that, it no longer associates back with this number or this number, so this never triggers because user number is being redefined. Let's go ahead and run this again. Okay, guess a number between 1 and 10, 4. Guess a number between 1 and 10, 5. We're still not triggering here. Let me... Now I'm not sure. Let's enter 5 again. I wonder if it's just caught in a loop. Let's go ahead and get out of it for a second, and we will reopen it. Because of that loop we had, it might not be working at comparison. So let's go ahead and get out of that loop. We'll get in here again. We'll enter 5. Beautiful. That time it worked. Yeah, it was just stuck in a loop and it wasn't refreshing. If we come over to our console, you'll see you win. Okay, let me go back to my split screen because I want to show you an important thing that was not happening. Yeah, an important thing that was not happening, as clear as that is. But here we go. Okay, if we run our code again, and I enter 4, and I enter 7, and I enter 5, you never see that's not right. You only ever see you win. Because as long as user number is not equal to guess, and by the way, we've used a new operator here, right? We haven't talked about this one. The exclamation point equals is a not equal to operator. It essentially makes sure that the two values are not equal, right? It checks to make sure that these two things are not equal to each other. So it's saying while user number is not equal to guess number, in this case 5, we're going to continue to prompt the user over and over and over again until they are equal. If they are equal, we then leave this loop and continue on. But we only leave this loop once they are equal. So one of the issues we have with our code is we will never be in this else block here because we will never leave this loop if these two things are not equal. We will only ever do it if it's equal. Well, what if we did want to give our user feedback on the guesses they were making? Well, let's go ahead and get inside of our loop then and do some control flow inside of our loop to determine what happens. So for instance, let's say if user number is greater than guess number, we want to say that console.log, and we're going to say too high. Else, well, there's actually two else's, right? There's kind of like, what if they're equal, and what if it's less than? Well, instead of using else then, we want to use else if. And else if is kind of like if, except it allows us to determine one more case for comparison. So in this case, we're interested in user number being less than guess number, in which case we can console.log and say too low. Finally, they are equal. Before this exits, which it will after we know they're equal, we just want to make sure that we tell our user good job. And now we have something that is sort of like a game. If we come over to our browser and run it, it says guess a number between 1 and 10. We'll say 1. We'll say 2. We'll say 3. We'll say 7. We'll say 8. We'll say 9. And finally, we'll say 5. And you'll notice we have 2 too lows, 3 too highs. It wrapped them up for us because it was repeating it over and over again. And then a you win. So we are seeing some feedback to our user as they go through this process. Well, this is almost like a game, but it's kind of too easy because in a game, there should only be so many guesses. Let's keep track of our user's guesses. Inside of our loop here, we're going to go ahead and define a new variable called let. Actually, let's do it outside of our... And we're going to start off at 0. Every time the user guesses, we're going to go ahead and add 1 to that. And we're going to do it saying equals guesses plus 1. And then let's just go ahead and when we're all done here, before you win, we're going to say console.log using our backticks you used guesses number of guesses. All right, let's go ahead and run our code again. 1, 2, 6, 7, 5. And you see too low, too high. You used 4 number of guesses. Did I? Let's check that again, because I'm not sure I did use 4 guesses. 1, 2, 3 guesses, 4 guesses, and I guessed the number 5. It says I only used 4 guesses, but I actually guessed 5 times. I wonder why that's happening. Well, that's because my first guess is actually coming out here before I've even started counting. So if we take that first prompt away and come up here and just give it a number as our first guess, let's say -1. By the way, it's never going to be -1, so it's kind of a safe thing to start with. We could also do 0 since we're asking for a number from 1 to 10. And run it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you'll notice I have 5 guesses. So we're counting properly. We're not getting that free first guess without sort of counting. Well, now I actually kind of want there to be some stakes. If you guess wrong, I want you to lose. So if, let's say outside of here, we say if, and let's do another test. If guesses is greater than 2, console.log, you lose. Okay, well, let's see what happens. So let's intentionally lose our game. 1, 2, 3, 6. Hold on. I've guessed way more than 2 times. I'm not losing the game. Well, what if I enter 5 and see what happens? Wait, I still win even though I guessed 6 times? How did that happen? Well, we actually haven't indicated anything here to break us out of this while loop when we exceed our guesses. So we print out you lose, but the game continues. We have to end the game. In this case, we can use a keyword called break. And break will break out of a loop when a certain condition is met. In this case, guesses being over 2 will allow us to say you lose and break out of the loop. Let's go ahead and try this again. 1, 2, 4. You lose, and it breaks out of the loop. And here we have a fairly decent guessing game. The one last thing that would make this a little bit better is if we didn't actually know what number we were looking for. For example, guess number equal to 5 is not great. How do we produce a random number? Well, this is a really good thing that we can always Google, right? Random number in JavaScript. Okay. So math.random, the math.random static method returns a floating point pseudo-random number. You don't really need to worry about any of that. Just to know that it's between 0 and 1. And so if we want a random number, we can use this math.random. Let's go ahead and try that out and see what happens. Math.random and just see what we get. I'm going to go ahead and log console.log the guess number up front to sort of see what we're dealing with. Let's refresh the page. We're going to guess 5. Well, now 5's not right anymore, so we'll guess 4. We'll guess 3. We lose, but let's see. Oh, my goodness. Well, how was I ever supposed to guess that? Okay. So we know it's going to give us a number between 0 and 1. So that's not a really great number to have to guess at. We want to make this more friendly. We want it between 1 and 10. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and multiply by 10. This is going to move us 2 decimal places. Now, we're also going to get all of that decimal stuff, which we don't really want. So we need to kind of round this thing to get an integer. And actually, if you look down here, they kind of tell you how to do it. There's another function called math.floor that'll go ahead and return a rounded version down, essentially a truncated version. We're going to just cut off all the decimal points. So if we do that, math.floor, wrap that inside of our math.random, or wrap our math.random and our times 10 all around that. And you'll notice we're doing times 10 because 10 is our max. But if we could actually take a max from the user or have a random max or something else and use that, that would be viable too. We're not going to do that. We know 10 is our max. Let's run this again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, interesting. So 3 was our number. We guessed 3. We guessed 1, 2, and then we guessed 3. We had used 3 guesses. We had won, and then we had also lost. So actually, having guesses down here at the bottom is kind of a problem because on our third guess, we got it right, which triggered the you win, but our condition is you're not supposed to have more than 2 guesses. So let's move this to the top of our loop so that the first thing we do is check to see if the user has guessed too much. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3. Bingo, you lose right away. And this time I'm going to go ahead and move my page over here a little bit so I can actually see what the answer is. Okay, the answer is 3, so I can try it out. If I guess 2, if I guess 3, I win. And there we've actually made a fairly decent guessing game that's a little bit complicated by the fact that we're actually using this math library. And you heard me say math library, like what is math library? Well, in this case, math is a set of code that somebody else has already written that we can have access to that has code inside of it. And so we're using that code here. We're saying inside the math library, which is a standard library inside of JavaScript, we're going to use this floor function. We're going to use this random function. So we're using code that's already in the JavaScript JavaScript libraries that somebody else has written to help us with our program so we don't have to rewrite this process. Now, I don't know all of these off my top of my head, so please feel free. You're going to have to sometimes say, hey, how do I find a random number, and then look it up and sort of see what's going on. But do take the time to try to understand exactly what they're saying, and they will give you example code, but I would not recommend copying. Okay, so our skills check for today is I do want you to write a loop, but in this case, let's do it with strings. So have the user try to guess your favorite color. Have your favorite color in there as a set variable right at the top, like we initially did with number 5, and then have the user try to guess your favorite color in a loop, and limit their number of guesses so that they either lose or they win. It should look like this. It's out of 4 points, basically making sure that you have a prompt for the color, you have a loop, you have some control flow in there, and it functions. All right, good luck.